Hi, my name is Rakar Aslan and I'm a lecturer here at the IEDE. And today we have a guest lecturer, Ahmed El-Geneidy, who is an associate professor of urban planning at McGill University. Today Ahmed will be talking about transit to the future city, stress and satisfaction in public transport systems. This discusses the changes that have taken place over the past 15 years in public transit market using examples from several North American transit agencies. I'll hand over to Ahmed, who will be talking for about 20 minutes, and then we'll hopefully have time for some questions later on from the audience. So.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for coming today. Before I start, let me acknowledge the students who did this work. So I'm going to show you a lot of stuff today. So these are the guys who did most of the work. If you have any questions, write them down and we'll give you their emails at the end. You can email it to them. Okay? So talking about transport in general, transport has been passing through the same thing over the past several years. So in the past we were suffering from congestion, so we used to deal with the congestion with this kind of new approach, which is expanding the roads, making them wider, and then when we reached this with this scenario, we found ourselves still back in the congestion. There has been a little bit of a move in trying to get people to move to sustainable transport, moving to public transport more, and trying to also to move to cycling in the middle of the city. Or when you build the new bicycle facility, this one was just built when I was just passing by it, opened that day, people were just jumping on right away on this new facility. So there are different approaches of dealing with how can we deal with the transport problems we have been facing to get people from point A to point B. And the main question we have been always looking at is that when we are commuting is a burden on people. So how much, who's satisfied, who's happy and who's unhappy with the commute that he's doing. And what we did several studies, and today I'll be showing you one of them, part of one of them, which is looking at the happy commuter. And who's the happy commuter, and trying to understand what are the external factors that we can have some policies that we can control on, and some internal factors that we can impact through other policies. So we can do educational stuff that can impact personal characteristics or change the mode preferences of people. And we look at this for walking, cycling, car, and when we do public transit, we try to break it down to people who are using bus only, or metro, or train, or a combination of the different modes. When we look at a typical satisfaction curve, how far people are satisfied, looking with the travel time, we found that the people who are using the metro are the one who are the least satisfied, and their satisfaction goes down way the longer they are the distance. The same thing we found it in Montreal when we were looking for the buses and the cars. So these are the three main guys who are unhappy when we're talking about their travel. How much unhappy they are with the satisfied with their trips. And we found statistically significant differences when we are comparing these two groups to the train users, the pedestrians, and the cyclists. Train users in general in Montreal, these are affluent people and using commuter trains in the suburbs, coming to the downtown core for work. So in my talk today, I'll be concentrating on the metro and bus users as much as we can, and we'll dig deeper in that, trying to understand the different characteristics. And another thing that we know that exists when people are commuting is stress, and this affects us as individuals. When I'm coming here today, I'm subjected to different levels of stress, what's happening to me, and how much stressful is the trip for me. And when we're trying to understand the causes of stress, we also split them into some objective and some subjective stressors, and we started clarifying the things that we have a control over. In Montreal, we have snow. It's a big thing. It comes and it sticks on the ground in around end of October, and till I left, we had still snow on the ground in Montreal. So this can be a very kind of stressful situation because there's a lot of unknowns about the travel itself. And then when you're trying to get across a bridge, they might close the bridge because of a boat is passing, so you get some delays. This also adds to the stress you're having. With a deteriorating system in Montreal that was built in the 1960s and 1970s, then you get a lot of breakdowns with the metro. Someone jumps on the tracks. It happens here, I think, as well. So you get a lot of delays. All this causes delays and causes stress on the individuals themselves. You can't go back to bring your child from a daycare, or you can't catch an appointment. So these are another areas of stress. When we compare how people are stressed between seasons, it's still interesting that the bus and metro, so these people are totally unsatisfied, unhappy, plus they're stressed. They have the highest stress levels compared to all the other modes, okay, here. And add to this that in the cold weather, when we have the snow on the ground, they're even more stressed because of they don't know what's going to happen on the way. If you hit a snowstorm, your arrival time or your travel time totally varies from one day to another. And at the end, when you reach your work, okay, the main goal is that you have to reach your destination and you have to do some job. You have to have some energy to do this job. So how much energy do you have at the end of the work? So one of the studies we did is that we looked at the energy, how much people do have energy when they reach their destinations. And what we found is that people in general, in the warm days, they are more energetic than the cold days, but still, the bus and metro, these are the people who have the least energy when they reach their destinations. So what we are facing in Montreal is that you have the public transit users are the ones who are totally stressed out, totally unhappy, plus add to that they are the ones who don't have enough energy when they reach their destinations. Digging deep in the understanding of stress and the main reasons for the increases of stress, we found that if you have doing transfers, transfers is a big issue when coming to the amount of stress being imposed on individuals. And when we go and dig a little bit deeper and try to do some statistical modeling in the causes of stress, we found that waiting time is the main cause of stress between train, subway, and bus. So how much are you waiting at the bus stop, or how much are you waiting at the train station for the thing? And the lack of information plays a big role in this aspect of stress. So how can we save the transit users? That's the key that I'll talk to you today. How can we save this public transit user, knowing that there are many challenges now. Because when we start succeeding to get them on the buses, we find the buses are crowded, and so they are unhappy, they're stressed, and then you have a longer waiting time. So all these guys are waiting for the bus here, and you have weather impacts. In Montreal, we have a big problem with the weather. When it goes to feels like -45, that's severely cold, and we have to deal with that somehow. How can we work with that, with the extreme weather? Breakdowns. So this is someone threw his cell phone on the tracks in Washington, D.C. Okay, so a breakdown like that causes delay, and this is a big challenge. They have to, the guy, he stops the train, he comes with this long stick, and he picks the cell phone. In Montreal, they took the decision, no, if you throw your cell phone on the tracks, we're not going to bring it anyway. It's your problem. If you jump to bring it, we're going to cut the electricity and we're going to stop it. So that's a big challenge, because we have lots of breakdowns that takes place. And then you see this kind of competition you're seeing, for example, here in London. When you start walking down the streets, you see the competition that's taking place between the buses and the bicycles and the cars, and how they are jumping on in front of each other, and how they are competing for the road. System image is a big thing in North America. And this is one of the things we have been working on with different transit agencies, because some people will tell you, I'm ashamed to tell that I'm taking buses, but I'm not ashamed that I'm here in Europe. So people who are using here in London, is it okay to be on a bus for everybody? It's okay. It's not a bad thing. But if you're in North America, no, this is a bad thing. People like me don't ride buses. You'll get this answer. In a survey, we had this question, and I'll tell you more about it. We get this answer. And the other thing is that we are also facing a new generation, a totally brand new generation that is tied to their cell phones and tied to their handhelds more than they are tied to their parents. My daughter, she texts me when we're in the same house. So I'm telling her, come please, I don't shout, come down, no. She texts me, I'm telling her, can you please come for lunch? Yes, I'm coming. And we text each other. If we look at something like this picture that we took randomly on the streets, you find that each one of these has some kind of device attached to him. So she's not even looking. This guy is not looking. This guy is in his ears, and this guy in his ears. And this guy still he has in his hand, but he's looking at me when we're taking the picture. So it's a brand new generation that we have to deal with, that with different dynamics compared to the past generation. So the policies that we have been adopting to promote the use of public transport and to make the public transport user happy are different how we were dealing with it 10 years ago from what we are dealing with today with this generation. Plus we start seeing new needs. So people who wants to get on the trains with their bikes, and who wants to go out and play hockey with all his big bags and his stuff on the train. And he wants to move these things. And the interesting thing that we found, and it's true, and this study we did in Montreal, and it's true all over the world now. It has been proven now, it's true in Australia, and in Germany, and in the US. When you get people who are young, when they are young, to use a certain mode of transport, they accept this mode. And then, as they age, we know that they're going to drop down. So people who are using public transit, public transit mode share, it reaches up high in here. And then when people in their 20s, and then when they age, and they go to their 30s, to the different kind of life stages, we found that they are dropping. But what we found is that if you succeed to get people to use transit more than when they are young, compared to the previous generations, yes, they're going to plateau, but they're going to plateau at a higher scale and a higher level. In other words, here, in 1998, when we did the first survey that we used, we looked at where people were generally here plateauing at this stage. But the new generation that saw a new driver's license, kind of very hard to obtain a driver's license, and gave them education about sustainable transportation when they were at high schools, we found that the penetration is there, it's not here anymore, it's up there. So we are penetrating this cohort at a higher scale when they are young, and then when they are getting older, yes, they are dropping, but they're going to be plateauing at a higher level, at a much higher level compared to the previous generation. And this is something we found to be true, not just in Montreal, but we found it around the world. The more you can engage the younger populations when they're young, the more they're going to stay and stick to use the system in the future. And this brought us to who are the transit users, what are the types of transit users. And the guy I showed you the quote from, he's the auto captives. He's the guy who has, if you do a brain scan, you'll find a Jaguar in his brain. He tells you people like me don't use transit, I don't take transit. But on the other hand, there are the captive users. And the captive users, these are the young who cannot afford to own a car, or they are people who are choosing not to own a car. So they are captive, but as long as this person gets the income, he moves to be either choice or he moves to be an auto captive. And transit agencies are trying always to move this line here to the right, get the potential user. The potential user are people who are selecting to commute by car for some reason or another. Okay, but they tell you, no, we can't use transit because it's not going to be convenient. I have to drop my child to daycare. So if you put the daycare on the way by public transit and make it convenient, then they will move from a potential user to choice user. And mainly, the transit agency are targeting these guys and trying to keep these guys on board. They don't care about the captive users much. But what they always forget that the captive users, when they turn to be uncaptive, like the young generations, when they get the driver's license, they drop out and they leave. So you have to make sure that they stay as a choice users. And digging deep in this group, what we did is that we got customer satisfaction surveys from 2 transit agencies in Canada. One in Montreal and one in Vancouver. And the 2 customer satisfaction surveys, we try to understand who is using transit. Does this figure that I showed you of the captive and captive by choice, is it really true? We did this study in 2007. Is it really true today? And to what extent this? So we had a sample of 10 years of customer satisfaction surveys. when we're talking Montreal, it's like 3.8 million people, and Vancouver, it's 2.3 million people. And here we had a sample size of 29,000 surveys, and this one had 14,000 surveys. And the nice thing is that these are two totally different surveys designed by each agency on itself. They have nothing to do with each other. And we are analyzing them in parallel to see if we can see a common groups of populations in the two surveys. So we applied a factor cluster analysis technique, statistical technique to do that, and we broke the groups into 3 subsamples. The first one is the bus users, and then the metro users, and the bus and metro. So metro is the subway, similar to the tube here in Montreal. Then for Vancouver, we had the bus users, the Sky train, which is an elevated train that goes all over the region, and people who are using the bus and Sky train. And we analyzed, let's go deep to look at the bus and metro users in Montreal, and what are the types of people you find in there. And mainly what we found like around 7 types of people, and we still have the captive riders who they don't have access to a car, similar to the previous research, and they are loyal. Okay, and then we have the choice users. These are people who have car access, they are loyal, but they choose to use transit. And we have also a new group that appeared, which is captive by choice. Captive by choice is a new group that appeared for us in this study, which is they have high income, they are not that loyal, but they are using it because of environmental reason. So I can afford to buy a car, but I don't want to buy a car because I think it's bad for the environment. So I'm going to use transit because of my beliefs. And this is a new group that's growing in the North American population. And I think it's also growing, will be around here. You'll have this group of people. The other groups who are occasional users and affluent weekend users, these were people who are taking their children only on weekends to show them the trains or to show them the metro. So and this was a very small group of individuals that we had in our sample. If we take the different groups and try to see how they overlap between the different modes, we found that, for example, the convenience seekers only available in the buses in Montreal. Here, the affluent weekend riders only available in the buses in the TransLink. But if we dig deeper, we can group the group into choice users, captive by choice, and captive users. And these are people who are using either on the weekdays or weekends, and depending on how they are using it regularly or irregularly, using the system. So captive users, they don't have a car, they're low income, some of them are loyal, generally satisfied with some aspect, not with all the aspects. Choice users are car users, they have a car, they can afford to take a car, but they're not low income. Some of them are loyal and regular users. Captive by choice, they don't have car access, they're not low income, they're older, they're not loyal, they're unhappy with the system in general, but they're still using it. And these are the ones we have to work on a little bit more to keep in the system as much as possible. Because when we go there, we see the similar figure that we talked about earlier, that had the choice and captive by choice and captives. Now we start seeing this new captive by choice coming in and appearing to us as a group. And still we have different groups of people who are using on weekdays compared to the weekend. Weekend has different dynamics, totally different dynamics, totally different policies that we need to adopt in order to implement strategies for them. When we look at just the regular users, the people who represent the bulk of here, we see that in TransLink we are reaching around 50% of the users are between regulars, 30% are choice, captive by choice are 10%, 9%, and the captives are 10%. Digging deep in satisfaction, how these groups are differently satisfied, we see that the captives are generally, they're happy with what you're giving them in the STM compared to the TransLink, to the two agencies. and we start looking at, and let me dig deep, we start looking at different policies, and who is satisfied and how much percent we can get them to be happy. So captive riders, they are not satisfied, especially in the younger dependent. If you have a young captive, generally they are not dependent, and what they need is they need information. That's why here in London, for example, they found the satisfaction went up last year when they are comparing their service, the quality of service this year went down. So quality of service went down, but satisfaction went up. Why? Because of information, because the presence of these new cell phone apps that people are adding and using on their phones, knowing where the information is coming, and they started implementing new policies of giving good information to the public. So giving good information and decreasing the prices will be the key for the younger populations, okay, the captive riders, to make them happy and on board. There are two types of the choice riders. Those who take transit because they are satisfied with the service, and they're mainly looking for cleanness, how clean the buses are, how clean the metro is every time of the day, and they are trying to look at, want to make sure that safety, the sense of safety is high, because many people are ranking the sense of safety, especially the older population. They're really vulnerable and they're really afraid that someone's going to steal their bag or someone's going to attack them. There's a lot of theft that takes place in the metro at stations. So when you go to the station, when the train gets to the station, someone will jump and grab a bag from a person and he runs away. So that's a different thing that happens. Choice riders, also we have those who take because of the benefit from it, which is cost savings. They are trying to save money and because of its convenience. While the captive by choice, as we said, these are the ones who are generally unsatisfied, unhappy, and they're still loyal. So although they are unhappy, but they're loyal because of their environmental or their beliefs of the system. So in order to understand how different the perspectives are, transit agencies are providing the service at a certain level. So transit agencies are generally, what they're looking at different performance measures, looking at service delivery. Here they look at the variability of the service as their main subject to deliver and give money to the people who are running the buses at TfL. And people are perceiving the system at a different level. So how much have you been waiting at a bus stop? The first minute you're going to tell me it's a minute. While for the second minute you tell me I've been waiting for an hour. So people perceive their time differently. While the transit agency are delivering at the same level, they didn't change it. But if you start changing the delivery of the service, improve the service, deliver faster, more reliable, something that comes on time, you'll find that the perception itself changes and it goes up so high. So if you save, for example, for someone a minute, he will feel that you have saved him 5 minutes. When people start using the new buses, they are so happy with the new buses. And then you find that the satisfaction goes up and their feeling of waiting and travel time goes down because they are sitting in the new bus. Okay? So this is some kind of psychological impact of the improvement that happened. And they overestimate the savings. And this overestimation on satisfaction leads to loyalty and recommending the service to other individuals. We did a test on that in Montreal. We did a Saint-Michel corridor where we started implementing different strategies. We implemented something like the Octopus card, which is similar to the Oyster here. And we did an express bus service that doesn't stop at every other stops at every other stop. And then we did the bus lane, and then implemented articulated buses so we can have more room on the buses for people to get on. And then implemented signal priority so that when the bus gets to the traffic signal, it passes right away. What we found in there generally is that you find that the situation, this is the initial situation and all this number, but if you look at the total savings here, we are savings after implementing all the strategies. On one route we are saving 10%, 11%, it ranged from 9.8 or 9.3 to 11.5% savings in travel time. So this is 10% savings, around 10% savings on travel time, And on the regular route that was running parallel to the other route, there was almost no savings. Some savings here in the negatives and some positive. It means that the service is not getting better. It's even worse. But people are seeing an improvement in service happening. They see the new buses, the articulated, they see all these things. When you go and look at the perception of waiting time, okay, right after the implementation, ask people how they felt about all these improvements, what we found that people were overestimating how much they have saved in terms of waiting time by 4 minutes, between 4 to 2.5 minutes. So people are telling me, yes, I saved 4 minutes, but actually the actual waiting time, we asked them, when did you start using the service, and compared to what they are using it right now, okay? And they told us, oh, I have saved 5 minutes of waiting time by the new service and the improvement that took place. So, but in reality, okay, this is how much they are saying, but this is the reality from the bus data. Because we get the bus data, so we know how much the bus saved in terms of waiting time. The bus didn't change their waiting time for people using this service. On the other hand, the 67 that we know that it did worsen in many cases, people start saying, yes, this is how much they have saved, overestimated by 6 minutes. They felt the waiting time went down by 6 minutes. Of course, and we did the 3 surveys, one in 2011, after the implementation, one in 2012 and 13. So with time, when you get used to the service, okay, your overestimation calms down a little bit, and you get used to it. So in other words, if you're implementing improvement strategies for transit to make sure that the policy, to make sure that the people are happy to use the system, you want to make sure that stagger it a little bit. Don't put all the improvement in one point. Because if you put all the improvement once, yeah, people will be so happy at the beginning, and then it goes down. But still, even when it goes down, after 3 years or 4 years of the implementation, they are still happy with the system and still overestimating how much they have saved. The major problem with some of the transport stuff we're talking about, or the improvement that we implemented in Saint Michel, is that we made the buses faster. And when you make a bus faster, it means it emits more. And when you get an articulated buses, a big bus, then you find that the greenhouse gas emissions, or the amount of emissions this bus is generating, is higher. And that was another thing we looked at as part of our study. So yes, people are happier. The transit is running much more faster, but in general, in terms of the environmental impact, you see that when you have the reserved lane, the bus is running so fast with the 467, the express bus, and this is when this is the amount, how much percent of the emissions. So in general, what we did is that we can have some kind of we can generalize things a little bit compared to when we're looking at the information we did in Montreal and Vancouver. We have these groups and they exist in different parts of the world, and we have to understand that they are existing. And these are likely to be in any transit agencies, and in order to we have to retain the captive by choice as much as we can, because the captive by choice is the most growing population. This population group of captive by choice was not present in the past. When we did the same study in 2007, this group was not even present in captive by choice. It only appeared in the new surveys that was done after a certain point in time. And yes, we can save the transit users, but we have to decrease their stress, okay, with the unknowns by providing them with the information and providing them with a safe and reliable service. And the information thing have proven to, because when I was meeting with TfL earlier in this week, they told me we had improvement in satisfaction. Did you give them any more information this year? He said yes. We had a better website, a better apps being developed for us on that. And so information was the key, and engaging the young population, because we know if we engage them when they're young, they're going to stay when they get older. Other than that, they're going to leave the system. So these are the people who funded the stuff that you have seen. These are the funders, and these are the guys who gave us the data that you have seen up there for different studies that we looked at. And these are the guys that you can answer your questions. Questions?
In terms of people's satisfaction or their perceived wait times, the perceived wait times were far less than what they actually perceived. Or their wait times were actually far
The savings,
less.
they're
Yeah.
saving. In fact, they saved 5 minutes compared to the actual.
Could that be influenced by a more reliable service so people can better time their trips? So even though in the data it's not showing that there's a huge time savings, people are better able to say, oh, the bus is actually going to be here in 3 minutes, and they know it will be there in 3 minutes, so they're saving they're saving time waiting at the stop, but not necessarily saving time through the service, if you know what I mean.
If you give them appropriate information, but in Montreal we don't have the appropriate information for these guys. So we don't have the next arrival that you're talking about. People are just still using, like the methods here of information they're getting, still the same as the methods they had before.
But if they have a schedule that says the bus is going to come at 15 past the hour, and the service is more reliable, they know they can get there at 13 past the hour, wait 2 minutes, and the bus will take them. As opposed to previously when the bus wasn't as reliable, they didn't know when they could show up at 13 and it could come, in 10 minutes, it could come in 15 minutes.
So you want to say like improvement in reliability will change your perception? Yeah, it will change your perception for sure. I agree with you on that. So if you improve the reliability of the service, you say the bus is going to be on schedule and you find it every day coming on schedule, yes, your perception of the travel of your waiting time will improve. But that wasn't the case in Montreal. The case was the reliability didn't improve, it didn't change. We were in the negatives. So people were even waiting longer. There was longer waiting times in general, or no change in the waiting time compared to the previous. So there wasn't that big of a change in the service. What was happening is that they had a little bit faster service, bigger buses where you can have more room for people to sit, and then they had the exclusive busway, the reserved lanes where you can see it. So people felt there is a change that's taking place. So then this was perceived as less waiting time for them.
I had a question about the surveys that were conducted over 3 years in 2011, 12 and 13. One of the things you mentioned was that environmental factors play a large part in how people perceive transport in Montreal. So were those surveys conducted at the same time of the year? So was it all summer or all spring or all winter to just normalize for seasonal effects?
Yeah, we did these in the summer. Every summer, we did them in June, between May and June. So we fixed them in May and June in the surveys, and mostly this route is a high frequency route. So we had it is a very short survey of, do you think the bus has changed your travel time? When did you start using this system? Did your travel time change? Did your waiting time change, and by how much? Positive or negative? And these were the only 5 or 6 questions we succeeded to finish from the full paper. The rest of the question, gender, age, these kind of things, some of them we kept missing because it's a high frequency, comes every, sometimes it comes every 4 minutes. So that was another problem that we had.
Generally, you've been talking about buses and underground trains as well. I noticed that the boarding time for an underground train is at least 20 seconds. And my understanding is that in some countries, especially Brazil, there's a rule where you have a door that's double width. There's an entry side and an exit side. In London, it's fight your way in, fight your way out. Ridiculous, the time that's lost in that case. Perhaps there's something we can do about that. And the other thing is, it's probably in the data somewhere, the RFID cards for paying the fare. How much saving in general does that offer on boarding times for buses?
That's an interesting question. Let me talk about your first question. So your first question about the boardings on the metro.
Double width doors.
The double width doors on the metro. So we did, yeah, I can see it here. So to save the problem in Montreal, see this thing? This has an arrow, people getting out, an arrow, people coming in. So people who are waiting to get on the train, on the metro, they have to stand on the side till there's people getting on to get off, to avoid this overcrowding thing that you're talking about. Juan Carlos Monez in Chile did another thing. He said, okay, he went and did cut the platform into half, because they have the trains. They are open from all the train. You can get from one door and you can get off from another. So he did a boarding and alighting kind of strategy. He said half of the people should be getting off, and he locked everybody. I don't know how he did it, but it was a very interesting academic exercise, and has a video. He locked everybody. He placed something here, and he locked everybody on this side who wants to get on the bus, on the metro, and only opened these doors. People got off, and then after that he opened these doors so people who are locked here can jump on the train. And he succeeded to save a lot of time in the subways in Chile, and he did that. Don't ask me how and who listened to him and how they did it. It's one of the biggest bus rapid transit. It's a Volvo bus rapid transit funded center. The other thing that you're talking about was what's equivalent to the Oyster card.
The RFID
The
card.
RFID card. Actually, it didn't save money and didn't save time. It did cost us even more time, because they did a contract with the wrong vendor, and because in the past you used to waive it. So when you waive it like that, now you have to stand and tap. So a person takes around 4 seconds to get on a bus. By tapping, you add a second. So you're going 5 seconds for every person. How many people are using the buses every day? Multiply this by this number, tells you how much operating time, and operating time in Montreal, for example, is around $100 an hour. So here it should be £50 an hour to operate a bus. Should be something like that. So every tap, every person getting on the bus. So if you have 2 million people getting on the buses, these are 2 million seconds lost because of the RFID. So in Montreal, we ended up losing money.
In cases where the bus driver will also accept money, then it must be improved.
When it accepts money, it's even worse. Because that's why they cancel the money here, because money takes more transactions. So if you're doing money, no, it takes even longer time. And in Montreal now they're saying you have to pay exact change or you lose your money. So he's not going to give you change. So there's no change anymore. Here, as I understand, that you don't even can pay cash anymore in London.
In the centre of London.
Yeah. Other questions? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ahmed, for giving the talk.